Yeah, here's the thing too, Christine. So over on Twitch, Christine just left this comment. It says, um, streamers are so high maintenance with their criticisms of games that launch with bugs and saying they can't recommend Stalker 2. What an amazing game this in and what amazing game this is, and to pass on this game because of some non-breaking bugs is honestly doing a disservice to the potential game players out there. I also feel like if you're going to be a content creator and streamer who plays games on day one, before a company has had a chance to work out all of the launch bugs and all the little tweaks and performance issues, you kind of lose the right to complain about day one things. At least in the way that a lot of people do. It's okay to criticize them, but it's not okay to just throw a game under the bus or throw a company under the bus. And I say this because I come at this from the perspective of the developer, because I have spent 10 years building games. And it's one thing when you have, it doesn't matter the size of the game, but the bigger the game is, the more complex it is, right? And we've talked about this on the channel a few different times, but like on a game like this scale, well, that's the thing, Transcend. It's not even game journalism. It's consider YouTubers like myself. We're just bloggers, man. We're just modern day bloggers. Call us vloggers, vloggers. You know, like we're just people with opinions. We're not critics. We're not, we can review things, but most people who review things haven't spent time in the industry. And so when you have a game that's as complex as this, it goes through internal testing. The testing pool of internal players is usually hundreds. It might be thousands depending on if the company has done an open or a closed beta. Um, Now, whether or not a company chooses to do an open and closed beta is up to that company. Just because a company chooses not to do an open beta doesn't mean they're hiding something from the public or anything like that. It just could be because they want to keep the story under wraps. I would personally never, ever, ever do an open beta for any product that I work on because I don't want the story spoiled. I want people to save the story for launch. And if you do an open beta, people can come in and they ruin the story. Open beta can be useful for getting eyes on things. But even in an open beta testing, you can have, let's say you get 50,000 people that come in and play your open beta. 50,000 people. That's 50,000 eyes on things. And those 50,000 eyes are going to give you a slew of data that you can use to then go forth and optimize and profile and figure out the weak points, what chipsets are working, what graphics set, what GPUs are working, what GPUs aren't working, what GPUs are having issues with what shaders, what lighting issues there are, performance hitching, what chipsets are working the best, what do you need to do with the console, etc., etc., etc. But then you get into the complexity of, okay, everybody playing on the Xbox is playing the exact same version. It's kind of easy or easier to optimize for that scenario. It's not going to be perfect. We can see that right now because some people have stick drift, some people don't have stick drift, some people have shader issues, other people don't have shader issues, and that's related to the different types of monitors that people are using, the different types of televisions that people are using with their Xbox. It also has to do with what type of controller are you using with your Xbox. Are you using a standard controller or are you using one of the elite controllers where you program things and all this other stuff? There are a lot of factors that go into the Xbox version of the game. But let's switch back over to the PC discussion for a minute, right? 50,000 eyes on your product during the open beta weekend. That's 50,000 different sets of data that you have to look at. Great. You do what you can, you squash bugs, you do performance updates, you do what you can, then you launch the game, right? And suddenly it blows up. Now you have a million sales, and we're talking the Stalker 2 community at this point. Suddenly you go from, say, and I'm using the 50,000 as an arbitrary number. I don't know what the size of their internal tests were. I use the open beta thing as an example because most open beta weekends get like 50 to 100,000 players. So let's just say they had a scenario where there was 50,000 to 100,000 people looking at things. That's 50,000 to 100,000 sets of eyes. Then you launch, you sell a million copies. Plus there's Game Pass. Let's say another, conservatively speaking, minimum of another million people playing the game. So let's say you have 2 million people suddenly playing your game. That is 2 million sets of data, which is magnitudes of scale, scope, and size beyond 50 to 100,000. Now you have millions of chipset combinations and GPU combinations and RAM combinations and monitor combinations and television combinations and controller type combinations and driver combinations and GPUs and CPUs and stacked on top of each other, right? So reviewer 1 might be having an issue that is unique to them because of their chipset, monitor, controller, RAM size, RAM configuration, driver update, type of graphics card, etc. Like they're having their unique scenario. Reviewer 2 is having their unique scenario. Reviewer 3 is having their unique scenario. All across the board. Now, a company has to do the best they can to optimize their game for as many scenarios as possible. It's physically not possible for any game studio. I don't give a shit who they are. It is impossible for any game studio to fully polish and have a game ready for release. Remember last year? What was the #1 most voted game of the year? Baldur's Gate 3. For those of you who don't remember the launch of Baldur's Gate 3, it was buggy as fuck. Buggy as fuck. My playthrough, which I live streamed the entirety of, we had cutscenes airing out of order. We had quest items that weren't dropping for quests, so I couldn't complete quests in the game. What did Larian Studios do? They started working on hot fixes and patches. Did they happen within the first 2-3 days of the game? No. A week. You know, these companies are working hard. GSC Games is working hard right now. They have a patch coming next week to address these issues. Larian Studios worked their ass off. GSC, by the way, is one studio. Larian had, I believe, 4 studios around the world. It is getting clipped out, Eastside. I've already timestamped. Well, I got my pen and my notebook out. I haven't timestamped it yet, but this is getting clipped out for YouTube later. So yes. Larian Studios had 4 studios around the world working 24/7 to squash bugs. Go look at the patch notes for Baldur's Gate 3. Every single patch had, no joke, no lie, thousands of hot fixes per patch. Thousands. They had 4 studios around the globe working on something. GSC is one studio. It's going to take them a little longer to be able to fix and squash all of the bugs that are now representing after millions of players have gotten their hands on the game. So yes, I do feel, going back to the original conversation that, which is Christine James over on Twitch, streamers are so high maintenance with their criticisms of games that launch with bugs and saying that they can't recommend, say, Stalker 2. It's an amazing game, and to pass on it because of some non-game breaking bugs is honestly doing a disservice to the potential players out there. So, we have been showing off in my streams. There are some massive shader issues and texture popping happening on my version of the Xbox, which is likely related to the fact that I'm not plugged in directly to my monitor because I'm plugged into a switch. So I have a switcher which connects my PlayStation 5, my Xbox Series X, and my gaming PC. They connect to a switcher. That switcher is connected to my Elgato capture card. Then the Elgato capture card goes to my stream box, which then in turn is connected to my monitor. There is a line of things happening in between the game and it hitting my screen. If I were to go plug this in, if I were to go plug my Xbox directly into my 4K Samsung Smart TV with everything, I would have a completely different gaming experience with the textures and everything else because of that's just the difference in things. Looking at that, I always say that when a streamer or a content creator plays a game on day one, especially with a big game that's selling millions of copies, there are going to be things that crop up. I have been showcasing those things. Even my initial review, I critiqued the texture popping, the audio issues. I've critiqued the fast travel stuff. but I'm still loving the game and having a great time, and I still absolutely recommend the game because I do understand that underneath all of this is a very freaking amazing game, but it just has some launch day issues and launch day bugs. No different than Baldur's Gate 3, which had patch after patch after patch after patch in the first month. Go look at how many patches Larian Studios dropped in the first month. There are literally thousands of bugs that got patched in the first month. Thousands. Thousands. And yet no one complained about, oh, Baldur's Gate 3 is a broken piece of shit. No one should play it. Blah. It's just bias, and it's also completely unrealistic. Streamers and content creators who bitch about day one games and bugs and say that a game shouldn't be recommended because it has day one bugs and performance issues, don't listen to those people because they don't actually understand what's going on. They're being reactionary and childlike in their approach. Now, are there game-breaking issues? Yes, there are some game-breaking issues that should absolutely be. Some people are having stick drift. That is a game-breaking issue for the people who are having stick drift. However, I'm not having stick drift. So when I make my videos, I can recognize that stick drift is happening, but I also, from a game developer standpoint, know that stick drift is only happening for a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the millions of players playing this game. We're talking fraction of a percent. So knowing that only a fraction of a percent of people are suffering from a stick drift issue means that it is not a game-breaking bug for millions of players. It is a game-breaking bug for a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Is it important that that bug gets fixed? Yes. However, people who say, oh, I have stick drift, this game is a broken piece of shit that no one should play, that is not, absolutely not a fair statement to make, nor a fair review to put out of the game. It is important to understand that yes, stick drift is happening, but it is not happening for the majority of people playing. So those are the types of things that are, like, even I today, for the very first time, we were about an hour ago in the first 30 minutes of the stream, I got to this encampment, and for the very first time in my 30 plus hours of gameplay, I had some stick drift today. First time I've seen it. We had about 4 instances in a row where there was a tiny little bit of stick drift, and I was like, oh, that's new, haven't seen that before. A minor annoyance, but not a game-breaking bug for me. So that's why on my channel, I do 3 reviews. I do the early access review, or the early thoughts review, which is immediately following my first stream. Those are my early thoughts. Then after about 25 to 30 hours of the game, I do an initial review. And then after I finish the game, I do a final review, which takes into consideration, did the company patch any of these issues quickly? How quickly did they patch? Did they actually patch? Etc. I don't do reactionary takes on my channel. So, content creators who do that, I don't think it's fair at all to do that and to throw a game company under the bus, because they're not understanding the nuance of launching a game into the public and having millions of players suddenly get their eyes on a game. And yes, some people are having issues, but just because they have a loudspeaker, I have 250,000 followers on YouTube, I have 2 million followers on YouTube, and I'm going to scream about how this issue is game breaking and I'm having a bad time and therefore the game is garbage and everyone should just ignore this game, don't buy it, it's a piece of trash. My favorite one that I've seen so far was the person who said this launch is worse than the Cyberpunk 2077 launch. And I saw that thumbnail on YouTube and I went, that's the exact type of review you don't watch, because that person doesn't know what they're talking about at all. And they're not giving a fair, impartial review of the game. They are ranting about something that's completely irrelevant. So yes, it's a great discussion point. And I'm timestamping this now for this YouTube, for it'll get cut out. So like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. So you can show up to the streams, which happen at 7 a.m. every single day on YouTube and Twitch, although today we started at 5:30 a.m. because it's Sunday and I had nothing else to do. And occasionally we have discussions like this because people in chat, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, will have great commentary that we can spin off into its own video. So follow along. And for the stream, we're continuing onwards, but I do have to timestamp this so we can pull this out for YouTube later.